Welcome, and thank you for joining us in Season 2 of the Let's Meet the Author Show. This is the online show that introduces self-published authors to the world. So let's join in on the conversation with our hosts and guest author.
Welcome to the Let's Meet the Author Show. I'm your host today, Alice Newsom. Today we have a really great author. She is a retired principal. She's a wife. She's the mother of two. She's very passionate about equity and student advocacy. Let's welcome author Annetha Jones to the show. Welcome, author Jones.
Thank you so much, Alice. It is my honor to be here to speak with you tonight. So thank you again for inviting me. I greatly appreciate it.
Oh, we appreciate having you here. Now, just off the bat, I want you to know that this is a very powerful book. I enjoyed every minute reading it.
Thank you.
Yeah, it captured me right from the beginning with your story, and then on through all of the work that you've done in the school system. Now, I kind of likened you to Principal Joe Clark. Have you had that reference before?
Oh my goodness, I love him. I love that movie.
Yes.
Everything he does, absolutely.
I love him too. And I said, well, maybe this is the female version. I don't think you had quite the tactics that he used, but your methods and your programs and your passion, like you said, for student advocacy is very clear and apparent in your book. And you don't stop there. You give us tools to use.
Yes.
To help promote student advocacy and equity. So we're going to get started with you, Anitha. And right off the bat, we're going to start the show with Author's Pick. Anitha is ready to share with you her thoughts from her book.
It's now time for Author's Pick.
Yes, I'm going to read a little bit from my chapter 1, and the title is You Get to Eat for Free, but You'll Have to Pay. As the start of my 9th grade school year approached, I was oblivious to what lay ahead, a situation laced with limitations within an educational system responsible for providing me with a quality education and ultimately higher learning. Once at school, I learned I had been placed in a class not conducive to expanding my intellect. It was the year 1978. I was a young, bright-eyed, energetic African-American girl bursting with excitement and apprehension about entering high school. I welcomed the various adventures that were awaiting me there. As I prepared for my first day of school, selecting the perfect outfit was important. However, my financial resources were limited and my wardrobe, or lack thereof, was scarce. After several minutes of contemplating, I was finally able to pair a two-piece ensemble together, which placed a faint smile on my face. Although my clothing choices may have been subpar, I took a great deal of pride in my appearance. Education was not at the forefront of discussions in my home, but oddly enough, I relished school and the extracurricular activities associated with it. Actually, I preferred being at school and enjoyed learning. As a result, I was seldom absent. Although not always equitable, educational establishments were not a variable in my life. They were a constant. Thankfully, I was gifted with a thirst to learn and blessed with a protective aura from God.
Let's Meet the Author is a production of Blue Rock Media, Inc., a nonprofit organization. Blue Rock Media, Inc. is dedicated to introducing you to self-published authors that have yet to be discovered by using social media as our platform. That's how you're watching the show now. This is exciting because you are now able to support the Let's Meet the Author show. Your financial donations allows us to bring self-published authors from around the country, around the world, straight to you. And here's the great news. All of your donations are tax deductible. We appreciate your generous contributions. And when you become a partner by giving monthly, you are entitled to benefits, perks, and special deals. Thank you in advance for your support, your love, and your financial gifts.
And now, back to the Let's Meet the Author show. Wow. Thank you so much for that reading and the introduction. Now, I want to talk about that. You said the book starts with a story about the first day of school for high school. Yeah. So you're excited and you go and you look for something to wear and you find something that brings a faint smile to your face. Yes. And then you go to school and what happens? Take it over from there.
Well, once I arrive at school, my friends and I congregate together. We were excited, elated to see each other. And then as we looked at our schedules and went on our various ways to our classes, I walked into my class, my math class, and it was unusual because what I saw, Alice, was a sea of Black and brown faces. Now, at some schools, that might not be unusual, but we only had a few Black and brown people at our school. It was predominantly Caucasian. And so when I walked into the classroom, I observed, like, why were we all here in this one class? In the past, I had been placed in classes with only 1 or 2 Black students. So to see a whole sea of Black and brown faces, a monochromatic classroom, it kind of made me think something's going on. So while my peers were happily running around, seeing each other and talking because we had been going all summer, I seriously sat there contemplating, pondering, why are we all here in this one class when there are so few of us in this entire school?
Wow.
And so after class, I went up to him and I asked him, why am I in this class? Why are we all here? And perhaps he was a fairly new teacher, not very experienced, and maybe didn't know that he probably shouldn't have shared with me directly, but he did. He said, because you all receive free or reduced lunch. So I asked him to be removed. He told me no, I could not. He wasn't rude about it. He wasn't. He just said, I can't do that. This is your schedule. You'll have to see the administration. I sought out the administration and they told me no. So I went home and I told my mom, I said, I need for you to come to the school and remove me from this class. Now, ordinarily, my mom, although she was a very kind woman, very kind, she wasn't involved in my education as I was a first generation college graduate. She didn't have the skills.
Okay. So, you know, your situation is very common to a lot of us today. A lot of Black and brown people, they receive reduced or free lunches, and their parents are not very involved in their education. So tell me, how do we combat that? What do we do? I know you've given some examples in the book. So tell me, what would you say to a parent whose kid has come home and said, you know, I need you to go to school with me? What do you say?
Well, Alice, you made a very good point. One of the primary reasons I wrote my book is to provide tools, strategies, suggestions to parents, educators, and all of us, the village, to help our students do better, right? And so what I would say to the parents, like I said before, although my mother was kind, she was not involved. Perhaps she didn't have the tools and she didn't feel comfortable. So I was on my own to navigate the system. Well, a lot of our students don't have, I was blessed. I mean, I don't know. I just have to say God, you know, instilled in me the fight for me to be able to do what I did. Because I really never spoke up like that before. I had never spoken on my behalf before. So what I would say to a parent or a guardian right now, please get involved. You don't have to have a college degree. You don't even have to have a high school degree. I hope you will work towards that goal, but you don't have to have one to be involved with your kids' education. As a retired principal and a former educator, I love teaching, by the way. It's my most favorite job of all, teaching. But as an educator, I will tell you this, when educators know that parents are involved, they double check themselves usually, not always, but usually they go, oh, Anitha's mother is going to be here. I better make sure I have this in order. Oh, Johnny's mother is going to be coming tomorrow. So when they know that you are an involved parent, oftentimes your child will get usually what they need, but you still have to make sure that you're there to ensure that they're, you know, getting everything they need.
Okay, so let's go back to your story. you talked to your mom and your mom went to school with you.
Yes.
And pick the story up from there. Were you changed from that math class? Did your schedule change at all?
It did. My mother insisted, because I told her, I said, there's no way I'm staying in this class, Mom. Take me out. This is far beneath my potential. I have to get out right now. She did. She went out there, and they removed me from the course. They placed me in a course that was probably, I was in one of the lowest phases classes out there, period, like a level 1, phase 1. They put me up into a phase 3, which is about average. I never assumed or presumed that I was going to be placed in the top course, like a level 4, which was the honors class or whatever, although I probably could have done well if I had been challenged. That productive struggle is what I call it. But they placed me in that math class, and I ended up doing well. I didn't have any more problems with my course placement throughout high school, because every time I got my schedule, I would double check it. Every single course. And then I formed relationships with some of my teachers, particularly my basketball coach. And she's in heaven now. I truly believe that. But she became a mentor for me, and she looked out for me and all of us girls, really. So they removed me, and I did better.
That's great. Now, you're talking about a lot of students right now, and you're a student advocate. So you yourself, as a 9th grader, first day of school, you took a bold step that kind of directed the rest of your life. Yes. It was a bold step, and you said, a lot of people look for their purpose, and it seemed that you found your purpose pretty early. Did you know that you were finding your purpose?
I didn't know. I had no clue. You have to understand, Alice, I wasn't raised with my father. He's deceased now, but I wasn't. She was a single mother, worked all the time. I was the only child that she ever birthed. So a lot of times I was alone. I did not know what my purpose would be, but I will tell you this. I had my grandparents, my maternal grandparents, they were both ministers. They were praying people. They weren't educated, but for someone who didn't have an education, they had their own little businesses, like, picking fruit, and they would transport people. And I would watch them and go, wow, I thought it was a big deal. And so I didn't know I would be an educator. And, but I guess God knew, and God directed my path and ordered my steps.
Yes, it's kind of like you stumbled into it, or you were forced into it. And after you took this path, you continued, and you didn't just go alone. You tried to bring others with you. Now, on that note, we're going to go into a break, but when we come back, we're going to talk about how you tried to bring others along with you. Okay, stay with us. We'll be right back with author Annetha Jones.
Thank you.
Be right back.
Your donations are needed to support the production of the Let's Meet the Author show. We interview talented self-published authors and expose them to the world. Thank you so much for your generous contributions. All donations are tax deductible. And now, back to the Let's Meet the Author show.
Thank you guys for staying with us. We're here again with author Annetha Jones. And Anitha, before the break, we were talking about how you didn't want to take this journey alone. You wanted to bring others along with you. You said, we can do better than this. There's more out there for us. So come on. So talk about that, how you tried to bring others with you.
Well, let me just say this. There's a chapter in my book where I discuss mentoring programs. And back when I was a child, mentoring programs, to my knowledge, weren't very prominent. Like, we didn't talk about them, right? But right now there's lots of them. But I used to, as a child, I unofficially adopted my own mentors, right? They didn't even know. I would watch, I would listen, and I would observe, and I would emulate. And so so one of the things I thought was really important, because I had people pour into me, some knew and some didn't know. And so I always said that when I got older, I wanted to do those same things. So I started mentoring programs. And one of my programs at Alice served more than 300 students through the mentoring program. And just the other day, I have little goosies thinking about it. I was on Facebook for a moment. And I saw one of my students who graduated recently, like last year. And she was with the mentor I placed with her at middle school, calling her grandmother. That gave me joy. So bringing people along to help bring kids up and lift them up was important. And also, I have been mentoring teachers, those who want to become teachers, and those who want to become administrators. That's very important to me, to give back what I gained.
Okay, that's great. Now, also in your book, you talked about students that you wanted to help get out of that math class, but some
Absolutely.
of them didn't want to leave. And you also talked in your book, and I thought it was a really valid point that you made that sometimes we don't think about. You talked about students who are on the cusp of, challenging them because they have potential. They have potential to make better grades and to do better and to have higher expectations for themselves. Now, you said you wanted to place some students in honors classes, but you ran up against a wall with some of them. Talk about that.
There was one Black male in middle school. The counselor actually came to me and said, he's smart. We need to place him in a higher level course, but he won't go. I said, oh, I'll talk with him. No problem. I thought it would be a breeze. And initially when I spoke with him, he was just like, okay, kind of like, it's okay. But once he realized that it was imminent, that it was going to happen, he didn't want to do it. And the reason was there was no one who looked like him in that class. And that's why we have to change that, Alice. We have to get more of those kids in there sooner.
Mm-hmm. That's what you say in your book, that we need to introduce honors classes to them at an earlier age.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Now, I have a grandchild who's in honors classes. Awesome. And she's bored. What do you do with that?
If she's bored in an honors course, you know what that means?
No.
That means she is more than likely very gifted. That means that she's not being challenged enough still. She needs to be tested for the gifted program. Number one, if she has not been tested for gifted, she needs to be tested for gifted.
She's been tested for gifted, and she gets straight A's all last year, straight A's.
So you know what needs to happen now? They need to individualize her lessons for her plan. So that means that her mother needs to get with the counselors and say, hey, she's not being challenged to her fullest potential. She is bored. And if she's making A's in those classes, that means that she's above where her intellectual capacity is above where they are. So at this point, she needs to have an individualized education plan. So a lot of our Black and brown parents don't know that. I mean, there are some Caucasian parents who may not know it as well, but more of them know it than not, because I've had these meetings. But if they go into the school, make an appointment with the guidance counselor and say, listen, my child is bored. She's making A's. She doesn't want to be promoted to the next grade level. How can you accommodate her? How can you help her? They can do some differentiated instruction. That means it'll take the learning from the regular book that they're doing and adjust that so that she's more challenged. Perhaps give her assignments outside of what they normally would do in the classroom with the permission of her mother.
Okay. Thank you. That's really great, valuable information. We're going to take another break, and we'll be back with this great author, Annetha Jones. Stay with us.
Hello, my name is Lena, and I live in Texas. I wanted to give a brief testimonial about how Annetha Jones's book has really helped me. I am a mom of a special needs child, and I've tried everything that I know how to do to try to help get the services needed for my son in the public school system. I kept hitting a wall, and I was given Annetha's book to get some helpful resources. One of the biggest takeaways for me was the need for an advocate. I myself am my son's biggest advocate, but having someone kind of come in who knows the ins and outs of the school system and also has a specialty working with special needs kids made a huge difference in our lives and in my son's school life. He has gotten all the services that he needs. Our advocate is with us at every IEP meeting. Every time I talk to the school about anything, our advocate is in the loop and just making sure that our son is getting everything that he needs. I know for a fact that our son would not have half of the services that he has now if I wouldn't have gotten an advocate. And because of Annetha's book, that led me to do that. So I am a huge fan. I am so grateful for it. Any parent out there who just is hitting a wall, don't know what to do for their child, special needs or not, I would highly recommend that you get this book, read it, and see what it can do in your child's life.
And now, back to the Let's Meet the Author show.
Thank you guys so much for staying with us. I know you're enjoying this conversation with author Annetha Jones. This is a remarkable woman. Actually, I say she's a phenomenal woman. You are a phenomenal woman, and your book is awesome. Totally awesome. Yes. Now, we're going to talk about discipline.
But you asked me about discipline, and so that is another extremely important avenue that needs to be discussed concerning our Black and brown kids in particular, because at some point, most kids, no matter their gender, ethnicity, race, it doesn't matter. At some point, most kids will break a school rule. It might be small, it might be large, but they'll receive consequences or what sometimes called corrective strategies, right? Well, here's the problem. They will get their corrective strategies, but sometimes they're a whole lot more than what their counterparts receive. And we need to ensure that these corrective strategies or consequences are equitable, that they are given to our kids the same way that the Caucasian students receive their consequences. So what I talk about in my book is the importance, once again, of our Black and brown parents being involved. I don't care if they haven't gone to college. It doesn't matter about that. What matters is that they see you there. People, the teachers, the administration, when they see involved parents, I'm telling you from experience, they take a deeper and closer look at what's happening with that child. So be visible on campus. And if you can't go to campus as much, call, email, whatever communication you can do to let them know that you are concerned.
That's a very good point, because a lot of parents may feel inadequate to actually go and talk to these teachers about their students, about their kids. So that's a really valid point. It doesn't matter your educational background. Doesn't matter. Just show up, be there, be present for your kid.
100%, Alice. I had some of my most involved parents, actually. I mean, it's a struggle sometimes. I'll be candid with, with getting parents on campus sometimes. But some of my most involved parents were ones who didn't have that extremely high level of education, but they love their child. And most parents do love their children. Almost all parents I've encountered, as a matter of fact. But they want to make sure that their kids are being treated fairly. And they would challenge. And that's another thing I talk about in my book. If you feel like your child is not receiving fair treatment or consequences or whatever, challenge that. You have a right to a due process, your child does. So you challenge that, and you ask for the evidence, you ask for the material. You don't have to do it in an adversarial manner. You just simply say, hey, can you show me, what transpired? Do you have documentation? Do you have conversations from the teachers? I'd like to see the evidence, because parents listen to their children and the school, the administrators or the teachers, and come together and figure out, okay, what is actually happening here. Don't always take your child's word for it, because sometimes they don't always, they kind of bend a little bit. And sometimes the school might be a little bit off. Listen to both sides, be visible, and your child stands a better chance of having a successful educational process.
Yes. Now, before we go, I want you to talk about your FAMU experience, because I thought that was really interesting. Yes. And ladies and gentlemen, so our author here was offered an opportunity to be a model.
What? And sometimes, although I love so much, you read every bit of my book. I love so much being an educator, but I always think about that experience when Ebony Fashion Fair came to FAMU. I was in a program called the Couture Models. As a matter of fact, I modeled with Deion Sanders' first wife, Carolyn Chambers. We were friends. We modeled together. We ran that runway, right? And so they approached us and asked us both if we want to travel with them. And I was just so afraid to leave school, because once again, it was hard to get to school. And I thought, if I leave school and it doesn't work out in modeling, what will I do? And now I think back and go, I could have done that modeling in school, but I didn't know at the time. But my experience at FAMU, Alice, I love HBCUs greatly.
Now we're going to go on and get ready to wrap this up. And we want to talk about your book and some points to ponder. So give our audience some points to ponder.
Yes, in the back of my book, thank you so much, Alice. In the back of my book, I have several points to ponder. And what I do with my points to ponder, I break it down. For example, I talk about, have you reviewed your child's transcript? Transcript, what do you mean? Well, that's the whole history of their education. Have you looked at where they are, the courses they're taking, and what they need to take to be successful and graduate on time? And I tell them, Once again, if you're not familiar, don't worry about it. Go in there and ask the guidance counselor to explain every bit of it to you when you have your appointment. Make an appointment during the summer, every single summer before school starts back. That's an example. In my points to ponder, I talk about making sure that those of us who have been exposed to education, bring a child along when you take your grandchild to visit a college, or your daughter, Alice, take one of her friends who may be underprivileged or at risk. Take those kids. I took kids to visit colleges. Those kids, and I will never forget when I was a high school teacher, I took a whole busload of kids to the University in Tampa, South Florida, right?
Yes.
I took a whole busload of kids over there. They got to see a step show. They got to walk the campus. And some of those kids, once again, I get the goosey. They were like, their eyes were open. They were like, oh my God, they didn't know. As a result, some of those kids not only applied to college, they went to college, and they told me later, otherwise, if I hadn't done it, they didn't even know about college.
Right.
So in my back of my book for Points to Ponder, I talk about things that we can do to help our own children and to help others. And I break it down. I give you suggestions on what you should be doing if your child's having trouble, if your child should be placed in an advanced course, the steps you take for communicating with the school. I really feel like I put a lot of time into ensuring that I try to condense it, but to give relevant and great information that I thought would help parents, students, and educators alike.
You did. You succeeded in doing that. It's an awesome book. It's so helpful. And I like in your book how you talk about community and how it takes a village to raise a child.
Yes.
That's so awesome.
I totally believe in the village approach, Alice, because like myself, for example, my mom wasn't there. If it had not been for my basketball coach and a few of my teachers, I had a couple of African-American teachers that I love dearly, right? I stayed in their rooms before school, after school, during school. They couldn't get rid of me. And if it hadn't been for those people pouring into me, I don't know where I would have been. Because some of my friends, they just succumbed to the unfortunate circumstances that we face. They did. And so that village approach is critical.
Yes, your book is really wonderful. And we thank you for coming on the show. There are more questions and more talk that I would love to just continue this conversation. But right now, it's time for us to get ready to end the show. But again, this has been phenomenal. You're a phenomenal woman. And I looked at your book and I thought, this book is titled Annetha Jones, From Poverty to Principal. I thought this could be a lifetime story. The Annetha Jones story. Yes.
Wouldn't that be great?
So, yes. It really is a great book. And I just thank you for pouring yourself into it. And I just thank you for sharing your life and your experiences. We just appreciate you so much. Now, I need you to tell us, where can we find your book?
Well, you can find my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Target. And also I have a website, AnithaJones.com. I have an Instagram, Annetha Jones, and I have a Facebook, Annetha Jones Author. And so just reach out to me. I'll be glad to communicate with anyone. If you have questions, I'll be glad to answer those questions.
We've had a wonderful time with Annetha Jones. Annetha, we want you to leave our audience with a quote.
Thank you. I'd like to share this quote. The beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you. B.B. King.
All right. No one can take it away. Thank you so much for joining us on Let's Meet the Author. We appreciate your time, author Annetha Jones. Buy her book, support her, help your children, help your grandchildren. This is a great book for anyone who's interested in being a part of a young person's life and helping them to excel and giving them great expectations of who they can become. Look at what Annetha did. She went from poverty to principal.
The Let's Meet the Author show is a production of Blue Rock Media Incorporated, in association with Eagle-EyeVideomaker, and is made possible with generous donations by viewers like you.